Well, gentlemen, we got a new sermon series coming up called Tagged. And so today we thought we'd take a little bit of time on the ONE&ALL podcast to let our audience know about it and why they should tune in. So it's called Tagged. Steve, why did we name this thing Tagged?
Well, on social media, our identity is not just what we want it to be, but it's also influenced by the world around us. And, we got people tagging us in all different things, and it's all starting to attach to who you are. And I just don't think it's working for people. And I think the world is wanting all the same things we've always ever wanted: hope, assurance, contentment, the ability to enjoy the richness of life while making our way through it. But the reality is that a lot of people haven't worked that out.
They haven't worked that out.
They're not there yet.
Yes.
So this series is going to, offer some massive solutions and some truth that might get you there.
And a lot of the reason that we find ourselves lacking in the solutions department is because we have a misunderstanding of Jesus. We've tagged Jesus the wrong way. And so that's, I think, partly how this came about as well. And so where in the Bible are we going to be looking, and maybe who in the Bible are we going to be looking at that's tagged Jesus the wrong way? Yeah,
so we're going to be heading to the book of Colossians. Is that one of your favorites, Jeff?
It is one of my favorites, especially in today's world, because it reminds us that there is a way that we can communicate the gospel, especially in this generation. If you remember the days of EE, Evangelism Explosion, you remember when you would just memorize some kind of speech that you were going to say. So you go down to the beach and we'd just release people and they'd go down. We'd have a program and there was a lot of success actually back in the 70s and 80s. Now, here we find ourselves in a new generation, and we're starting to realize you can't do things the old way. Sure. And what Colossians will do, it'll do two things. First of all, it'll help you understand that if you're one of these persons that says, I understand the gospel, you're going to realize, no, you don't. You're not even close. I mean, the difference in the past was always to show the difference between grace and works.
Yeah.
And we would emphasize grace, and somehow we understood that people had some kind of foundation to hear that and then say, oh, wow, that is different. That is what makes Christianity different. That argument doesn't work anymore for a few reasons, but it's still the truth, the difference between grace and works. But if you think you understand that completely and how deep that goes into your life, you're going to find in Colossians, you've just scratched the surface. You don't know how wonderful this grace idea really is. And then the second thing, of course, is, and I'm sure Steve's going to talk about the supremacy of Christ in all of this. You got to get away from programs, away from memorization, the 4 spiritual laws, nothing wrong with them, but those kind of things. This is a type of generation that will remind us that the demon's too deep. It's too deep. You can't just do it by rationalization. There's going to have to be something that strikes the heart of the individual. And that's where Christ, he always supersedes any program, any memorization. And then as you learn more about him, it'll enrich your own faith.
Specifically, Steve, where in the world do you see the need most? And what kinds of things do you see symptomatically that require a message like this, a fundamental re-understanding of Jesus? How do we identify that we have lost and misunderstood who Jesus is?
Oh man, everywhere. One of the cool things about Colossians is that Paul was addressing philosophies or things that were wrong in the church in Colossians, but we don't know really what the problems were. And that just shows the genius of God, because now this book actually solves the problems everywhere. In my country, Australia, where I'm from, the problem there is people don't know Jesus. So they don't know that this huge treasure that could transform their lives, and they don't know him. Now in America, it's probably a little bit different. It's more like Jesus has been reduced to slogans and bumper stickers. And so they think they know Jesus, but maybe they haven't found him in a way that can transform their life yet. And so I think this series is one of those ones that's going to declare the truth in a really profound and clear way, so that if you actually do know Jesus, things are going to change dramatically for you.
Yes. And so we're looking at the book of Colossians. Is there a particular week that you're very excited for in this season, or a particular resounding theme that's going to hit? Maybe it's one that you're preaching. I think each member of our teaching team is going to be hitting on a week. Is that correct?
Well, you got to come to the whole series.
Got to come to the whole series.
And that's not just the preacher talking. The reason the youth pastor in me used to always tell young people, read the book of Colossians first, because it, in such a succinct, tight way, reveals who Jesus is and how it can profoundly change your life. And it's so good. So you've got to read it in order. You've got to read it the way it's delivered. You've got to come to these sermons in order. We're not jumping around. We're going right through it. It's going to be great fun. And there is one section in chapter 1, which if I was a gifted orator, I would love to be able to just read it out. It's probably one of the coolest bits of scripture that describes Jesus ever written. I hope someone creative does something with it.
What is it? Is it like a rap? Is it like a spoken word? Is it like a country song? What is it in there that needs to be performed by, that you can't perform it?
It's Paul just declaring the truth of who Jesus is. And one of the phrases they use, like Bible teachers use, is they call him the cosmic Jesus. And what they're saying there is Jesus from the perspective of outside of time. Whereas most of the Bible is written about the human Jesus, which is the Jesus that we saw and watched live a human life. But this little segment is like, no, this is Jesus from a cosmic perspective.
Okay.
And it's intense.
That's awesome.
And the things it says are like huge, what it's saying.
Yes.
And it's written so well that you sort of want to jump out of your chair at the end of it.
That's great. Now, one of the things that I tend to fall into is thinking that we have Jesus figured out in the church. Like, we have a correct understanding. I go to church every week. I have an understanding of who Jesus is. It's the outside world that needs better understanding. But the interesting thing about going to Colossians is it's a letter to a church who has a misunderstanding of Jesus. Jeff, why is it important to go through something like this? And how do we as Christ followers, maybe who go to church every week, we're not like the once a month churchgoer, why is it important for us to realize that even we who are maybe in the Word every day don't have a full grasp of what's going on and shouldn't fall into that trap?
Yeah, I would compare it to an inoculation. We're in a culture now that has somewhat been inoculated. So why do you give an inoculation? You give a little bit so you don't get the whole thing. And so we're kind of preaching to a culture that has a little bit of everything, but we've become a little bit apathetic. And so a lot of the truths don't make their way down deep into our lives. So when you come to a book like Colossians, it's kind of a wake-up call that you're not, who are we dealing with here? Like Steve said, we're dealing with the man, Jesus, the Son of God, the Son of David. We're also dealing with the God of the universe. And this is not something to play with.
Yes.
And so that's why I said, if you think you understand the gospel, the grace and works, the minute you come to your life and you say, you know what, I love the gospel, I understand it, but the more I understand, the more I realize I don't understand, that's when you start to make your advancement.
Maybe for a listener outside of the United States, this is applicable to anybody, anywhere in the world. We are human, and so we fall into this trap of thinking we have things figured out. What would be, and either of you could speak to this, what would be maybe some reasons that people outside of just Southern California should listen? Like, how does this trap play out in other parts of the world? Maybe culturally specific. What is somebody dealing with maybe in India? What would somebody in Australia be dealing with, New Zealand, in the UK? What traps are they falling into where they have misidentified who Jesus is?
So everyone's going to have an opinion, especially the world, of how to fix your problems. And so, in the Western world, you can't go a day without having 500 opinions thrust upon you of how your life would be better if only you would, right? Fill in the blank. And now every culture has an offering, which I would call a false offering to solve your problems. And everyone has an opinion. That's why the whole tag thing, that people are continually going to say, well, you need to do X, Y, and Z, and then you'll be happy, healthy, content. You'll have hope and assurance and a future. And the simple fact is that even in Paul's day, right through history, Jesus is the only sufficient answer to those things. And so you're going to live a futile, frustrating existence if you chase after other solutions to a Jesus problem.
Yes.
And then I think what Jeff was just saying is many Christians are frustrated because they have a small Jesus and they're wondering why they haven't got their problem solved.
Yes.
And the answer is, well, your Jesus is too small. You haven't worked out who the real Jesus is.
That's so good. Yeah. So when does, for our listeners, as we kind of come to a close, when does this series start? Give it.
It's the first week of September.
Ooh, very good. That is the correct answer.
First weekend of September.
First weekend of September. Yeah. And how long is this series?
4 weeks.
4 weeks.
It's a short book.
4 weeks of tag.
Tight.
They can get ready in a couple weeks for this upcoming series. Either of you do have words of why somebody, we'll start with you, Jeff, why somebody should tune in.
Well, I think we just sort of answered it to a degree when we talked about going 4 weeks. Anyone who's listened to the One and All media for any length of time knows that we pack a lot in one message, and we don't apologize for that.
Yep.
We do believe that this is the time that you're giving people some meaty stuff and letting them go over it. You know, that's the thing about media. You can listen to it again and again and again. But what we're trying to do is not just state the obvious when we're delivering sermons. We're trying to get you to think a little bit. And even if you have to process, that's good. And because we feel far too long, we've kind of preached to the lowest common denominator. And that's not the best. If you really know what you're talking about, you can challenge the thinker, but you should also be able to say it in plain enough language where even the seeker or the new believer can take those nuggets away. Colossians is going to do that. It's the perfect book to do both. High idea, at the same time, the basic core of the gospel.
So this is a great thing for you as a listener to invite your friends to.
Absolutely.
You want them here. People in the church, outside of the church, benefit from this. Steve, why should someone tune in?
Oh, let me quote from history. There's a Romanian bishop back in the day, and he said, evangelism is to clean the face of Jesus. And what he was basically saying is that the world has put all different makeup on who Jesus really is.
Wow. And
everyone's got a messed up idea. And when you look into the Word of God and take its point of view of Jesus, what you're doing is, he said, is literally like cleaning off Jesus' face so that people can see the real Jesus. And I think that this series is going to do that. It's going to clean off his face. You're going to see the real Jesus. And man, I don't believe anyone who sees the real Jesus is turned away. The people who don't want a relationship with God, they run away from Jesus because they don't want to see the real Jesus. But if you want a relationship with God and you want your life to be changed, if you see the real Jesus, you won't run away because he is good.
Well, if you want to see the real Jesus, wiped clean through 4 weeks of nail polish remover and everything else we have. Tune in first week of September for Tagged.